Obviously, it's a DHT, so we don't have any estrogen conversion, so it is a drier compound. That does limit its prolonged use if you're using it as a standalone, because eventually you're going to smash your estrogen levels into the floor. So it does limit its usage as a standalone oral, and you are probably looking at 6-8 weeks. For most people, anything longer than that is probably going to start to create some low estrogen problems.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally. If you're new to our content, Dave is an expert witness for the UK court system testifying with PEDs. He's also an educator to the military and to the police forces of the United Kingdom. Today, we've got a bunch of listener questions. We have a profile of the week. We're going to talk again about Anavar because our Anavar profile is gone. It's no longer on YouTube, though it is on audio podcast app. I do want to mention that all of our programming is brought to you guys by evalbloodanalysis.com. If you're in the UK, you can get your lab work done by Dave. We are brought to you by STROM Sports Nutrition. If you're in the UK, they've got a lot of great health and performance supplements over there. What's our code over there? What do you tell them, Dave, at STROM? Do we have a code over there?
Richard is a dick. 20.
Yeah, that's our code over there. No code, but definitely they support us. We support them. And we're brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. In the U.S., use our code THINK for additional savings on high-quality, third-party tested supplements, protein powders, creatine, all the carbs you can think of, all the flavors in the world. They've got it all. And supplementsource.ca for our Canadians. They have great discounted prices on top name supplements. Dave, we've got listener questions, but we're going to start this thing out by redoing our Anavar profile.
Okay.
What do you got to say? Tell us all about it.
It's a tablet.
Yes, it is. That's a good start.
It's taken by fannies.
What? Yeah, it used to be real popular compound with females. It was one that was well tolerated. But now I think women, they take like everything there is. They're like, yeah, I take the trend.
So, yeah, I mean, all right. Oral, generally dosed 10 or 50 milligrams, was very popular with women, but I think more that the women user profile or selection of female users was small. As the women users profile has broadened, i.e. there are more women using now than ever, I think more women have discovered that they don't get on with it that well. So I don't think it's still viewed as the base go-to as a starter for females. I think it's now more of a choice drug. Rather than that's what you want to start on, because a lot of women now, as the number of women that have been exposed to it has broadened, we've seen that more women don't actually get on with it that well. So it's not the female-friendly drug we always thought it was. From a side's point of view, it's not particularly aggressive, but some women do not get on with it at all. They find it very intolerable, just in a general feeling like crap when they're using it.
Yeah, I've worked with women who have been very successful with it, and then I've worked with less women that haven't been. I think that part of this has to do with our community has gone to more of a long-term approach. You know what I'm saying? Versus in the past when it was used, the doses were low, literally 2 milligram to 5 milligram, every day. And that was for a controlled period of time, 6 to 8 weeks. Whereas now people are looking for more higher doses in a longer term project, and in that case, then you do maybe need to worry more about your estrogen levels getting totally smashed, your testosterone levels getting smashed. And that's where I think the whole idea of female testosterone use has become a bigger part of it. That and the TRT clinics being more than happy to put a 25-year-old woman on test replacement,
I think the other problem is, we're going off topic slightly, but with female TRT is that a lot of the adulterated roots that women actually record that then think they need to go on TRT are more due to a diet phase they've completed, or the suppression of using drugs like Anavar that they haven't fully recovered from at that point.
Yeah.
I see a number of women post-comp, they'll get the bloods done, their test is low, and their immediate reaction is now, because of the popularization of it, I need TRT. And it's like, no, what you need is some fat in your diet.
Yeah.
And if you put some fat in your diet, your testosterone levels will recover. Females are very, very sensitive to their fat intake and their body fat levels when it comes to their hormones.
Yeah.
Having said that, Anavar, from a male perspective, is generally well tolerated. It's not something I would say is a particularly dramatic drug. I mean, for comparison, you take something like D-Belloxy and you're going to feel that you've taken those compounds fairly quickly for one thing and another. Yeah. Particularly fullness and particularly the impact on strength, where Anavar is a little bit, obviously it's a DHT, so we don't have any estrogen conversion, so it is a drier compound. That does limit its prolonged use if you're using it as a standalone, because eventually you're going to smash your estrogen levels into the floor. So it does limit its usage as a standalone oral, and you are probably looking at 6-8 weeks. For most people, anything longer than that is probably going to start to create some low estrogen problems. And again, that will be dose specific as well. It is not overly stressful on the liver. I mean, obviously, all orals are going to impact the liver because they're 17 alkylated and they have to withstand breakdown. But it's not an oral that's particularly stressful to the liver. It does increase LDL. It's
decrease.
No, it increases it.
Increases? Sure. Oh, LDL. I'm sorry. I was thinking backwards. I was thinking HDL. Sorry.
Yeah. So all orals will lower HDL, but the double whammy as well is when you lower estrogen, you'll lower HDL. And Anavar is a bit unique in that it actually increases LDL as well. So it's not great for your lipid profile. But again, dose and duration will play massively into that. Yeah. Dosing wise, I would say for males, you're probably starting around the 30 milligram. And I think for most usage, you're going to be 30 to 60. Your bigger users are probably going to be able to push a bit higher. 100 is not ridiculous, but you are getting to the top end of where I would be. I don't see any point in going higher than that. I would then be looking at doing something different rather than increasing Anavar beyond 100 milligrams. Hardness, there is some argument that it has an effect on T4, T3 conversion. I'm not sure on the science on how strong that is and how much that carries over to real world. It is a nice compound. It generally well tolerated, not super dramatic, but you're going to see some improvements from it. Obviously, with the oral mechanism, you're looking at non-genomic pathways rather than the straight androgen receptor.
Explain that, please. Non-genomic versus genomic.
Okay, so orals generally don't engage with the androgen receptor. So what happens with injectables is they connect to the androgen receptor, they go into the nucleus of the cell, they impart their delivery instructions, and they come back out. That AR then releases them, and it'll bugger off to go somewhere else or convert to estrogen or whatever it's going to do, and that AR then splits. But there are receptors within the muscle tissue that aren't androgen receptors and don't travel into the nucleus of the cell. So you get a secondary pathway through orals. So you start to create precursors to developing more muscle fiber. It's not... A lot of when you talk to people like this, they sort of think, well, I have to include orals in every cycle because I've got this second route. It's not that carried across in real world. And this is one of the reasons why you'll never see the same results off orals as you will off injectables. One is dose tolerance, but two is the pathways in which they operate. There is one oral that does ARs, but that actually might be Anavar.
Really?
I can't remember. There's one that engages with AR.
Yeah, I that's not something I'm familiar with.
There is definitely one that does. Hang on, let me. Right. You talk to people. I'll have a quick look.
All right, I'll talk to people. Hi guys, how you doing? Thanks for joining us today. And also, too, I'll mention if you guys want to see more of our content, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. I can say that I've known coaches who are huge fans of Anavar, specifically in a contest prep phase. And then there are those that would prefer something else like Winstrol. Personally, I've been more of a Winnie fan, and I feel like I've been able to achieve a drier, harder look with that. But Skip, for instance, he'd take Anavar over Winnie any day of the week. Generally, we're talking that last. If you have an oil-based protocol going into a contest prep, I would look at adding it in for the last, say, 6 weeks, maybe even 4 weeks, something like that. I think one of the benefits of your oral compounds is that they're generally going to have a much more rapid effect. That said, out of all the orals, I would say Anavar is probably the slowest. So I'd say 4 weeks would be the absolute minimum going to a show. 6 weeks, 8 weeks wouldn't be crazy talk, but I wouldn't rely on it as kind of like you were saying, Dave, as my main meat and potatoes. In an off-season phase, I could see, if you're doing, say, a 12-week program, the last 8 weeks, something like that would be just fine. What'd you find, Dave?
I do think it does. I'd need to dig through some of my actual proper paperwork, but from a quick AI look, I do think it does. I think it's the one oral that does actually engage with the AR. Okay. Which might be why it has this effect on LDL.
I have seen people say, hey, if you use oxandrolone only, that you wouldn't need to do a PCT if you were to come off. I would not agree with that personally.
No, that's bullshit. Orals are suppressive. They just take longer. So effectively, our bodies are full of hormone receptors, estrogen receptors, progesterone receptors, androgen receptors, all sorts of hormone receptors. As any level within any of those receptors increases, the brain realizes that there's a hormone increase, and in order to regulate it, it reduces signaling for hormones. This is what shutdown is. It's a direct feedback response to elevating hormone levels. Because in a male, estrogen comes from testosterone, if estrogen is high, it will cause the reduction of testosterone production. If prolactin is high, it will cause the reduction of testosterone production. If testosterone is high, it will cause. So any compound that engages with these receptors can create suppression. Because orals are generally dosed lower than injectables, it is a bit slower for this suppression to build up, but it still occurs. And you will see suppression in females as well as males. And going back to what we were just saying, arguments that I looked at females yesterday who was on Anavar, of all things. And her estrogen was not fully shut down, but it was suppressed. And her FSH and LH were suppressed. And eventually, if the duration is long enough or the dose goes high enough, you will create full shutdown. But because we generally run orals at slightly lower doses and we run them for shorter durations, most people won't experience full shutdown. But this is why I was saying about limiting Anavar-only cycles to 6 to 8 weeks, because you'll end up with low estrogen. It's that suppression. The Anavar suppresses the production of testosterone, so testosterone levels drop. You don't feel that because the DHT of Anavar is impacting with the receptor. But because you've got low testosterone, you end up with low estrogen.
Yeah.
That you will feel. And that's why you limit your exposure. Unless you add an aromatizing compound, which will allow you to run for a longer period.
Yeah. Yep, and of course, dose is going to be part of how fast that happens, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. I think a lot of the people that are watching our shows are on TRT year-round. Up until recently in the U.S., you could get oxandrolone prescribed, and it was very common to get 25 milligrams per day prescribed. Not a problem, people were using that, and I found it to be, when we talk about like your TRT plus protocols, or your sports TRT protocols, I do think you're going to get some additional benefit from a low dose. And we're speaking from a male perspective still, from a low dose like 25 milligrams. But I think you're going to experience a better performance boost than actually seeing like a lot of extra lean tissue gains from something like 25. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, any way of increasing the androgen load should result in net improvements down the line.
Yeah.
But obviously, you also increase stresses on the body.
Yeah.
You know, and that goes across the board. Anything that changes the performance of your body, be it a nootropic that changes your brain performance or a stimulant that changes your energy output, that's going to have to be paid for at a certain point down the line. You're going to need an increased recovery. You're going to need an increased nutrition or something to offset the fact that you've had a bigger payout because you've used something to increase the body's performance. There is a balance point in that, like you said, 25 milligrams of Anavar, 20 milligrams of Anavar is going to yield some improvement in performance and not be overly, hugely negatively impacted in the way it stresses the body. But you're still going to have this baseline medication that's oral use, which is still going to apply some stress to the liver, which will then have so it's almost like instead of your liver baseline being 0, for argument's sake, you're now running at a baseline of 20. So if anything comes into your system that's liver toxic or liver stressful, there's less redundancy in your liver to cope with that because it's already working, dealing with the Anavar at a constant dose.
Yeah.
So there are add-ons in this, but all things being equal, anything you do, anything you add in, there is a cost to it. And it's just a case of managing that cost and being aware of that cost. But it's not, that's why I'm not a fan of sports TRT, for the simple reason is I don't like the use of TRT in it anyway, because it gives out signals that it's medication when it's not.
Yeah.
But that has a long-term price. You get exposed to that for 4 or 5 years, and there's going to be downstream effects that are starting to build up. Where I would rather people look at it as a low cycle, because that's technically what it is. But you've got more and more people running 200, 250, even 300 meg a test and 100 or 150 meg of Master or Primo, and effectively saying that that's their TRT. Go back 15 years and tell someone you're on 500 milligrams of total androgen. That's a cycle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting the way things have evolved. I think that's a whole other topic, and we probably have gotten into that before. But listen, let's move on because we have a bunch of listener questions. And guys, if you want to take part in the next show, then comment below. If you had some things about Anavar that we didn't cover, then definitely let us know. We could only say so much, in this period of time. I'm sure we could do a lot more. We've got a listener training question, Dave, and I believe it's about the squat. Let me see if
have we got something about that shirt?
Leroy Davis wear this shirt. You realize that, right?
I don't care what Leroy wears. It's a horrible shirt.
Dave has something against flannel shirts, guys. And I kind of think it's like when the bull sees a red cape and he just goes mad. I kind of feel like that's a little bit of what's going on here. Thankfully, we're not in the same room. Thankfully, there is an entire ocean between us. We'll go to this question, Dave. It's from Tor. He says, there's been a trend for a while for people moving away from the barbell squat in favor of hack squats, belt squats, pendulum squat. If you look at the biggest legs we have seen, like Tom Platz, Big Ramy, Branchwarn, Kai Green, Meadows, James Hollingshead, etc., they were all phenomenal barbell squatters. Barbell squats is a very demanding exercise to master, and for many, so many gravitate towards something easier. But can this be a case of easier is not always better? Thank you. Good question, Tor.
Yeah, I squats is obviously a very basic movement. What I like about squats is it's a very functional movement. It engages not just your quads and your glutes and your hamstrings, but also your calves and your core, and your stabilizing muscles as well. So for a functionality point of view, it's a very, very good movement. It is a demanding movement, yes. And people would argue that they can push their legs to greater failure using a hack squat or a pendulum squat because one, there's a safety aspect there.
Yep.
And two, they're not then vulnerable to core failure, collapse in the movement they're doing. And that's very true. Does squats build a better leg than using the machine movements? I don't think so. The muscle knows to contract. It knows to pull on joints. It doesn't recognize a movement. It just recognizes the muscles that it needs to use in order to complete that movement. Would the squat be more taxing than other movements? Potentially, but at the same time, it may be limiting to how much stress you can put into those muscles because of, like I said, core failure or just fear. I mean, if you've not got under a squat bar and stepped back and gone, fuck, then you've probably never squatted ever. Because when you step out with big weights on your back, it is intimidating. You step back with that and you're like, fuck, I don't know if I'm coming back up with this.
Yeah.
And anyone that's squatted heavy's been there. Whereas a machine does give you more confidence. So I wouldn't say that one exercise is superior over the other, more that they have different ways of stimulating the muscle. However, I think what the squat does demonstrate is somebody's willingness to push.
It sure does, doesn't it?
And I think that, yes, I do think that people move to machine work because legs is scary and legs is intimidating. And I know when I was training properly, many, many years ago, I'd be nervous about leg day. I would literally start to get anxious the day before because I knew legs were coming up the next day.
Yeah.
And I knew it was going to hurt like hell. And I knew it was going to be incredibly taxing. If you've never gone into a leg workout with that sort of apprehension, then there's a chance you've never actually trained your legs to their limit. You've got more in the tank because it is such a demanding body part. So if you move to machines from a safety aspect, but you still push to the absolute limit of your capabilities, then I don't see there being any really difference. However, if you move to machines because you're trying to avoid the workload that comes with legs, then yes, there's going to be a dramatic difference because you, to an extent with squatting, you sort of can't run away from them.
Yeah.
You're not going to be bouncing out of the hole like you can on a machine. You're not going to be having all those sort of things that you can play around with like you can do on a machine. Like very, very high reps are much easier to achieve on a machine than they are when you're doing 3 weights.
Yeah. I think here's a couple thoughts. I think overall, I'm a fan of the barbell squat. Do you absolutely need it to grow massive muscle? I think more so, I would believe that learning how to do a squat is going to be great for your foundations. For guys that are just getting into this, I would say learning how to squat and getting good at it for the first 4 years, of bodybuilding, I think isn't a bad idea at all. And realistically, Brandon brought something up here. He said, I'll get back to that. Here's another thought is that I think it takes time to figure out how to effectively squat to grow muscle. I could tell you that when I first began squatting and my goal was just to get heavier and heavier with it, my stance was more that of a power lifter's, where I was trying to use everything I had in my body. My hips got highly involved with my squatting movement. And I found that it wasn't really a good leg grower. I had to play with the movement. I had to pull the weight back. And I ended up being one of the people that elevates my heels to be able to bring my stance in close enough. The smarter I got with training, the more I could get out of the squat. And I feel like that knowledge transferred to everything else that I did. I think machines are great. Don't get me wrong. And I'm a huge fan of it. I wouldn't say that squats are going to be the only thing that I would use to grow my legs. But I would definitely put it in there as being one of those main meat and potato foundations. I don't see there being a reason with squatting every other time. A lot of people are doing push-pull legs nowadays. What if you squat one day on your leg day, and what if you use the hack squat or the pendulum squat on the other time? I think that's fine. Brandon brought a question to us saying that, just a comment. He said there's an argument that barbell squats thicken the midsection because they engage the core so much. So for a tight waist in current judging criteria, hacks are preferred now. What do you think of that?
I think it's absolute bullshit. No disrespect to Brandon, but I think it's absolute bullshit.
Yeah, I agree.
In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think the squat teaches you to control your core, and the reason we get so many blown guts these days, or we were doing for a couple of years ago, was because it was too much reliant on machines where there's no core control required.
Well, you are, one of the thoughts with getting those thick midsections is that you're blowing out and bracing for a movement like the squat, and through that process, bracing against a belt, you're thickening that up versus training to pull it in.
Yeah, I disagree, because if you squat correctly, you're only blowing out half an inch if you're bracing against a belt. But it teaches you to engage the core in the movement, which helps you with core control on stage, where when you're in a hack squat, you don't need any core control at all.
I think it's a lot harder to get a lot out of the squat, like for the muscle. I'm not talking about frying your central nervous system and destroying your cardio. Like you can kill your cardio real quick.
I was going to say, compared
to compared to hacks or pendulum, I feel like you can get in that machine and you can hit your, say, quads, for instance. You can target your quads a lot faster than with a barbell squat. It takes time to learn.
One of the problems with the squat, I think, is that most people focus on the squat or whether the squat is good based on the load they can move with the squat.
Yeah.
So a trap that a lot of people fall into with squat is that they're trying to improve the numbers on the squat, when you should approach it in the same way as any other muscle group or any other exercise, where you're focusing on the actual muscular engagement in the movement. And when that clicks in your head, and you squat with the muscle rather than trying to put numbers on the bar, you'll find the squat becomes a very, very productive exercise. Yep. You'll also find you're not moving stupid levels of weight with it, because you don't need to, because you're making the weight work for you. But I think a lot of people go into the squat. We judge, when you look at a squat, you judge it on, well, how much can you squat?
Yeah.
When actually, if you break the movement down and start focusing on what you're feeling and how the muscles working in the movement, you'll find it a much more productive movement, and you'll find you need nowhere near as much load.
That ties right in with Jack's related squatting question here, or his comment. He said that related to squatting, I've gone through 2 meniscus surgeries on my left knee and can only do some movements in some machines. Are there some compounds that will help with cartilage? I really miss heavy back squat day. I want to tell him this, so I had about 90% of the cartilage removed from my left knee, and I had an ACL reconstruction in that knee as well. That was like 1997, okay? Like, technology is so much better now, by the way. They took a piece of my patella tendon from my right knee, and then they used that as the ACL in my left knee. They had to put both of my legs in splints, and I was in a wheelchair for over a month, unable to walk, because of, like, now people are literally like walking out the next day or the day of after an ACL replacement. That said, years ago, I used to really bang my knees up. And the more I focus on what Dave has talked about here, about trying to get more out of the muscle, the less knee issues I've had. The best leg development I have had, bar none, was just a couple years ago, training in my home gym, using a lot of leg press, a lot of hack, and a lot of squats. And I found, though, that by making the exercise harder and getting the most out of the movement, I was able to train the hardest I've ever trained and not have any knee issues. Versus years ago, I was trying to load up the hammer strength leg press, and I would get a rep and then lock out, and then get another rep and lock out. The more control you can have over the weight, or the more control I've had over the weight, the less knee issues I've had, and I was way less likely to hurt myself.
Yeah, I would say to Jack, focus first on the movements where you can feel the quad activating. and then just really concentrate on that over the load for a while, I find actually just closing my eyes and just literally focusing what I'm feeling. And you may find that you have to slow the reps down to start with, but as you get more attuned, you'll find that the rep can be a little bit smoother and a little bit quicker. But don't be too concerned about the weight. Focus on the feel, make sure the muscle's taking the load, and then build from there. Once you've established that connection and you're feeling those movements, and there will be some movements you'll never get on with, or you'll always have problems with, particularly post-surgery. But once you start, what you're doing then is you're pushing the load into the muscle rather than dispersing it across the muscle and the joint. That in itself will start to protect the knee more.
The more muscle you have, I found, the more that kind of keeps that knee in place. I found too that my friend VJ helped me develop my squat technique because, like I said, years ago, it was all going to the hips. I wasn't growing my quads. We went all the way back to body weight squats, and for about a month, I was literally torturing myself with only body weight. I absolutely guarantee you that if you learn how to torture yourself with a body weight squat, then you just put a bar on your back, and that's hard. You put a quarter on each side, and that's hard. But it takes getting rid of the ego. It really does, because you can make a body weight squat impossible to get 20 reps to failure. You know, like it's brutal, man. I'm talking like 4-second negatives, flexing the quads as hard as you can, no pause at the top, pause at the bottom, you know, take all that momentum out. If you do that, like it's brutal, man. It takes time to figure that out. And after you do, you can start applying weight to it, and you don't need a lot to make a lot of progress.
I had the opposite problem with my squat. It was too quad dominant, and I was getting no glute engagement.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, my ass just didn't fire. It was all quad.
I didn't get a lot of glute engagement either. I had to go to isolation work I had like white guy butt syndrome. You know, like my quads grew, and then I figured out how to grow my hams, and then I had to figure out how to grow glutes last.
I had big hams, big quads, and shit glutes.
How about citrus bergamot? Another listener question here from Patreon. He says, coming off a blast, do you guys think taking citrus bergamot will help get lipids back to normal-ish faster for purposes of getting blood work done for health reasons? Don't plan on blasting again soon.
Yeah, citrus bergamot will definitely help support your HDL. It's something I would pretty much run around. If you are TRT or you are cycling regularly, I wouldn't take it out. I think what you really should be looking at doing is building your HDL up when you're off cycle, so that you've got a buffer and a cushion for the inevitable lowering that's going to occur when you go on cycle.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
Rather than this just trying to, because what a lot of people will do is they'll go on cycle, HDL will drop, might go 0.7, 0.8 or even lower. So they'll jump on the supps until it reaches 1.1, and then all of a sudden they're off the supps. No, keep going. Build that buffer so that next time you're on cycle, you've got, you're at 1.7 and you've got plenty of ceiling room to come down before it starts to be a concern. I mean, there's a lot of argument around cholesterol and lipids and how important HDL is and whether HDL and LDL is a concern. And I honestly don't know the answer. When you start looking at the research around cardiovascular problems and HDL, etc., it's very sketchy. And the heart foundations have had to sort of say that they don't see a direct link with low HDL and heart problems. Having said that, I had a heart attack because of plaque buildup, which I do believe is down to years and years of low HDL. Because I've never particularly had bad cholesterol when I was on point, because my diet was quite clean. It's only since I've stopped that my diet's gone crappy and not so good, and my cholesterol's come up a little bit.
All my years on, I was low, like 25 on HDL, 25 to 29. I couldn't get it past that. And now, years later, a couple years later of not having pushed things anymore, my cholesterol came right back up. Now I'm in the 40s plus. I
mean, just so people understand how it sort of works, the vast majority of cholesterol that we use, and we use cholesterol to make hormones, we use cholesterol for cellular construction, enzyme production, we use cholesterol for a lot of things. We've got this basic idea that HDL's good and LDL's bad. It's not actually true. So LDL's main role is to take cholesterol from the liver and put it in the bloodstream. HDL's main role is to take cholesterol out of the bloodstream and put it in the liver. They're transport proteins. They move cholesterol about in the body. If we have low HDL and we have low LDL, there's still a balance. But if LDL goes high, we're dumping too much cholesterol in the bloodstream and there isn't enough HDL to balance and take it out. We end up with an excess in the bloodstream, which then develops plaque and over time arterial narrowing and can lead to a heart attack. If we've got too high LDL or too low HDL, this is the scenario that occurs. However, there is the opposite as well. If you've got too high HDL and too low LDL, you can actually have not enough cholesterol in the bloodstream, which starts to affect hormone levels and starts to affect your health, particularly your mental health and your cognitive health. One of the problems we regularly see with women, particularly post-comp, is that their cholesterol levels are too low for their hormone production, because whereas men will produce up to sort of naturally, you're looking around the 20 mark of a healthy male for NMOL in testosterone, and subsequently around the 120 mark PMOL for estrogen. Female estrogen production gets into 1,000 at certain points in their cycle, or definitely in the high hundreds. So they need a much, much greater level of cholesterol in order to produce the hormones that they use physically. So when a female's on a low-fat diet, it has a much stronger direct link to their hormone levels. So cholesterol levels in a female become much more important from a point of view of health than they do in a male. But even low cholesterol in a male will affect a natural male's hormone levels and will lower their testosterone levels. So it isn't so much about keeping one high and one low. It's about that balanced ratio where you've got enough to clear, but not too much that you're low, and enough to push back in, but not too much that you're high in your blood system.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. I think it's a great explanation. All right. How about this one? First of all, I'm not going to put the question up because I find that's not very helpful for monetizing the show. By the way, if you want to support our programming, guys, Patreon, that's much better than the YouTube monetization. It doesn't always work for us. So guy from our Patreon says, and he says it was a friend of his. He says it wasn't him. He was using a peptide, taking it sub-Q. Yeah, the pin got bent while drawing the peptide out. Thus, the pin was weak when he used the same pin to take his sub-Q peptide, and it broke off. What should he do? Pretend it didn't happen and just ignore it?
No, you
go on with the rest of your life. Pretend like it didn't.
The funny thing is, so when you get taught how to inject, they always say leave an element of the needle out in case it snaps, so you've got something to grab to pull back.
They do say that.
I've never ever known of anyone actually snapping a needle, so this is the first time I've ever heard of it actually happening. If there's needle and he can't physically get any hold on it because it is in the fat,
I go to the hospital.
It's going to be difficult, but yeah, if you're lucky, the body would just start to reject it.
Yeah, hopefully.
But it could create anything from infection to an abscess. It's a foreign body at the end of the day. The body's not going to like it. And even though that needle may be completely sterile, it doesn't mean it can't create a sterile abscess.
You know what I don't like the idea of? So you definitely have a real sharp end sticking in you. And if you were to press on that in any way, bump it, is it going to get pushed in further?
It can travel. These things have been seen to move around and travel into the body or back out of the body. So it can travel. I would definitely have a discussion with a medical professional around it.
Yeah, don't ask people on a podcast this question.
Yes, no. It may well be that they turn around and say, "I'll just leave it; it'll sort itself out," and that may be the actual case. I just don't know.
Yeah,
but it's the first time I've ever heard of anyone losing a needle in themselves.
Well, Brandon Wise says cupping may bring it to the surface. That's some smart thinking. It may. Who knows? And Jack, by the way, man, he said he was a guy with the cartilage. He says, was there any rehab to get full range of motion on the squat? Right now, I can't even go past 90 on free squat without major discomfort. I'll tell you what, man, message me. Hit me up on Facebook and drop me a message, and I'll give you my contact info, and I'll see if I can come up with some ideas for you.
He'll send you nudes and dick pics, just warning you.
Dave. Why are you
and he'll be wearing that shirt. He'll be wearing that shirt when he does it as well.
All right.
I don't know what's more traumatic, the shirt or the picture.
I'm going to get back in shape, and I'll do a calendar shoot with this shirt. I'm going to cut the sleeves off, Dave. How about that?
I would hate it less if you cut the sheaves off, to be honest.
Really? Okay. How about this one, Dave? We've talked about this before. NHS prescribed Testogel. Purely for TRT, not for bodybuilding reasons. What are your opinions? We have given our opinions on this before, but real quick, what's your 30-second summary?
As long as you get absorption from it, I actually think it's a very good way to do TRT. It's the closest to natural. It's going to give you the closest natural peak and response, but it's if you are able to absorb it in a sufficient quantity. Some people are, some people aren't.
Yeah. All right, that's good. How about this one? And it's a topic we also have discussed. I can't put the question up on the screen. That would not help our cause in any way. He says, Dave and Scott, what do you got there?
Biscuit.
That's a cookie.
Oh, a bit.
A biscuit is like something you put in a pan, they rise, and you put butter on it. It's like a bread. A biscuit is like a bread. It's like a roll.
Do you like my mug? Do you like my mug?
No.
It's got a grumpy face on it.
It fits. It fits. If I saw that, I'd say that's Dave's mug.
It is my mug. And stop dissing my biscuit.
So anyway, he says in my current gym. Is that the way British people eat cookies? Is that Turkish? Like, are we witnessing high tea right now? Is this high tea, Dave? Is this how you do it? Cheerio, mate. All right. He says in his gym right now, everybody is raving about blends. There's a EQ, TMT, which is test, mass
and trend.
Yeah. And then there's a Nandro test with test and DECA. And then there's a tri-trend, hexase and an ethane, 50 each. He says, this is just examples. I've done my research on the forum saying it's impossible to mix that amount in 1 milliliter of oil. He says, now I know some lads who have grown very well off of it. What are your thoughts?
My experience is that I have never seen, well, very rarely, that's probably untrue, very rarely seen a blend that actually is dosed as it should be.
How do you know that, Dave? I know, but tell the audience.
Well, lab work, mate. Not lab work as in blood lab work as in lab analysis of the compounds.
And you've seen a lot of lab analysis being an expert witness, right?
I have, yes. I do tend to see a set of lab results from some analyzation once every couple of weeks anyway.
Okay.
It's like SUST. SUST is a blend. I've never seen a UGL SUST yet. In the ones that I've seen tested, and granted I haven't seen every compound tested, far from it, that one contains all 4 esters. It's usually only got 3 of them.
Okay.
And 2 at the right quantities that it should be to be SUST.
Yeah.
So the big problem with these blends is not that they have active compound, because they usually do. It's just that they may not be balanced in the way you think they are. So like your Tri-10, will probably have Tren Nth and Tren Ace, but doesn't have Tren X in it.
Yeah.
Some do, some don't.
And how do you know otherwise? You know what I mean?
You wouldn't. I mean, you'll still be getting 150 milligrams of Tren out of that tritren. It's just the hex bit won't be there.
Yeah.
Same with your Nandra test. You've probably got test and DECA. It probably will total or come close to the milligram total that it's saying it is, just not in those proportions. And that's the big problem. For most people, that isn't an issue. But if you are someone that is sensitive to one of those ingredients, the way it is proportioned in that blend could be important to you. Regards total milligram, I would be suspicious of anything claiming to be 400 milligram or more.
You can suspend with super solvents like ethyl olate and glycol, right? It is possible, but you're saying that from what you've seen, it's usually not the case. Okay.
The other thing is, yes, you can. One, it isn't the easiest to keep. And two, it is generally very painful to inject. The higher the concentration of compound in that injectable, the more that injection is going to hurt.
Yeah.
So I would be very wary of anything that's claiming to be 400 or above. And generally, I would stick to stuff that's actually saying it's slightly lower dose. So, like if I was looking for UGL now, I wouldn't go over anything that's 200 or 250 per mig per mil of either test or DECA, because I'm more likely to get what I'm paying for with those doses, even if it means I have to inject more oil.
Yeah, and from a logistics point of view too, financially it's usually a more cost effective route. The blends, they usually have some sort of deal, and you're thinking to yourself, hey, this is going to be a better value. But the reality is that you also have to look at how are you going to dose your program. Are you going to dose your cycle? Because you're going to be tethered to the ratios that are going to be in that blend if you have different compounds. So if you take like one of these cut stacks, it's a test mass trend cut stack, like you're tethered to that amount of trend regardless, even if it had all three compounds, which you've shown us lab work before that like out of all these different blends, none of them had mast, or the DECA was actually EQ or vice versa, something like that. So I would prefer to have better control over how I dosed things. In fact, especially in a cut that you're going to want to be able to modulate the dosing to get the results that you want. It's not just a black and white thing.
I mean, the other thing is there's more flexibility in using the individual compounds. So if you were to go the one rip, so Tren Ace, test prop, mass prop, or the TMT, which is basically the long-acting versions of those same compounds. If you started to have an issue around the Tren, or for argument's sake, your life circumstances changed where you were suddenly having a lot of crap going on and Tren wasn't the best drug to be in the mix, you've got to stop that whole compound. Whereas they're individuals, you can dial it back, you can take it out, and continue with everything else with no problem. So yeah, there's less flexibility when it comes to manipulation of the cycle if things start going a bit piton, which does help.
Pete Tong. You told me, we talked about that before. Pete Tong was a DJ, right?
Still is.
He still is a DJ. Mm-hmm. And Pete Tong means going wrong. Going wrong. How does that? Why did that phrase come up? How did that start?
Cockney rhyming slang is quite literally that. So apples and pears, stairs. I don't know a lot of it, so there'll be obviously someone from London that probably knows a hell of a lot more. And that colloquialism, that language has continued to develop as time's gone on. So there's now more modern references, and one of them was there's a DJ from who made his fame on Radio 1. I don't know if I think he's still with Radio 1, but called Pete Tong, dance DJ, spends a lot of time in Ibiza and all that stuff, and it became, it's all gone Pete Tong, it's all gone wrong.
But why? Did he do something wrong at one time?
I don't know if he actually did something wrong or if someone just coined the phrase and it stuck.
Okay.
I mean, language is a weird thing. I'm not going to get into it. It's not the sort of thing we talk about on here, but UK modern language and modern terminology has a lot of slang that makes no sense to me whatsoever.
That's because you're getting old now. You know, we'll have to bring your daughter on to explain all that to us, right?
You know, and there's roadman terminology and stuff like that it's just like beyond me. I don't understand it, but languages develop, they change, and I'm told that this is just part of the evolution of the English language. Seems a backward step to me, but I suppose every generation has thought that. I mean, Shakespeare was supposed to be somebody who absolutely obliterated the English language at his time. He used phrases and terminology that was considered as being very poor English at the time, whereas now we would regard it as very high English.
Perhaps now we can discuss those 3 favorite cakes. I think that's like we're back on YouTube, so we're trying to keep things safe. Dave?
Cheesecake.
That's 1.
Mm-hmm. Cheesecake again.
That's 2.
I'm going to do an English thing. Eccles cake. That screwed you up. You haven't got a clue what that is.
No, I don't know what an Eccles cake is.
It's basically a pastry full of dead flies.
What? Is that like a term for raisins or something?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got it.
I actually like Christmas cake. I like fruit cake. I do, as long as it's nice and rich and moist. I actually do enjoy a fruit cake.
I'm not a fruitcake fan. I don't like that. But then again, I don't like textures in my cakes unless it's frosting. Like if you have like a layer of frosting, I like that. But I don't want I don't want nuts. I don't want fruits. I don't want raisins. None of that. I want the texture of the cake. That's why I'm eating cake, Dave.
Yeah, but I don't see. That's it. I find like your Victoria Sponge red velvet sort of.
Ooh, I like red velvet.
It's boring.
All right, I have one more gear question here, and we're going to have.
I have a question for you that I've just been sent.
Oh, what's that?
Is Mr. McNally at the Arnolds this year? I hope not.
Who's asking?
That's Romana.
Who's that?
Romana Scott.
If it's in the case of Romana, then I'll say yes, I will be there. Is she going?
So are you going to the US?
I'm going to the US.
Right, but you're not coming to the UK.
I don't think so. I would love to.
Thank God for that.
Is she going to the US?
I don't know. She may be. Are you going to the US, Romana? Do you want me to ask her?
Is she? Okay. I thought she was there with you, like she walked in the office. Romana does. She's a really great female IFBB pro, and she's made a huge amount of progress in the last couple of years. And I got to meet her when I was out there in the UK. She works, unfortunately for her, she works for Dave. She does a really good job, but I feel terrible for her to have to. I do have one more question, and
whoa! Don't sell the girl short. She came 12th in the Olympia.
Yeah, she's fantastic. That's That's pretty much what I just said. Right?
Romana, don't speak to Scott. I'm talking to a computer screen here, so I'm going completely nuts. But
if she was on, I was going to ask her to step in for a minute. So, okay, third time. We're going to have to be careful with the words we use here, because there's a certain word that starts with an S that has to do with unaliving yourself, which may come up because we're going to talk about aromacin, and aromacin is an unaliving inhibitor, right? Okay, so now that we're on the same page, everybody.
It is effing ridiculous that we have to go to this extent.
It doesn't matter. They're probably not going to monetize us anyway, guys. But we'll try. Okay. So, is it safe to say that aromacin helps to lower estrogen permanently, where Arimidex lowers estrogen temporarily, and then it bounds back to high estrogen level? Aromacin is useless for me at 700 test and 1,000 HCG. He says per week for a cycle with 25 VAR. He says Aromasin every 2 days, and it could not lower my estradiol for less than 330 pmol. It says the Aromasin isn't fake. I purchased it over the counter. I would be thankful if you could explore these two compounds. Welcome back to YouTube. I was rooting for you guys to come back. By the way, guys, if you ever don't see us on YouTube, we're still putting the show up, but you have to go to Rumble. Dave would rather we were at Rumble anyway, because then he can freely say words. We can freely say words, basically.
I can freely say words.
Yeah.
It means I don't have to engage my brain before I open my fat mouth. So the actions, one, stops the production of aromatase. That's ADEX. The other binds with aromatase when it's in circulation, making it inert. Like all drugs, they have a life. We generally talk about drugs as in half-life, which is the time it takes for that drug to degrade by half. But effectively, it's a measurement of the decay rate of that drug. So when you use aromasin, it will attach itself to aromatase, meaning that the aromatase then cannot attach to testosterone. However, the body's still producing aromatase. So it is, yes, that aromatase will die off along with the aromasin, but your body is still going to produce aromatase continuously. Well, you've got to remember with these systems in our bodies that they aren't just an on-off switch. They are continually happening and continually evolving.
Yeah.
So when you use something that attaches to aromatase, so you use an inhibitor of that nature, an unaliving one, yes, it will take that individual aromatase it binds to out of play, but the body is still going to be producing more. With ADEX, it stops or lowers the actual production of aromatase. So as a result, aromatase levels drop, which makes ADEX superior from a point of view of effectiveness in lowering estrogen levels in somebody.
Yeah.
The offset is that because ADEX stops the production of aromatase, one of its side effects is actually lowering HDL. Aromasin doesn't affect HDL, which is why aromatin can be preferred, because it's not going to be bad for lipids. I personally like aromasin because as it's a lower impacting drug, it's easier to fine-tune your estrogen management dose-wise. ADEX is a bit more impacting, so it's a bit more of an on and off switch.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit difficult to fine-tune because you literally can't divide the tablets into that smaller dose, that's tiny anyway, in order to fine-tune your estrogen management. There is, with ADEX, so with Arimidex, there is a slight balloon in aromatase when you stop using it. It's not huge, but you will see aromatase production spike post the usage of ADEX. And that is simply because you've restricted that from operating.
Yeah.
Your body knows it's low. So when you remove that restriction, there's a slight overcompensation for a short period of time.
I've never noticed it with that, but I have, and I know it's possible, I have noticed it real world with letrozole.
Yeah, but the letrozole is 96-98% efficient. So you are really slamming estrogen hard. And as a result, the counter reaction to that is
greater.
A bigger boost on the other side. ADEX is in the 80s efficiency. So as a result, the rebound is a little bit less. Real world terminology, the only time it's probably going to impact you is for a week or so post usage if you particularly have a sensitive balance with testosterone and estrogen levels. You're going to see a little bit of an estrogen spike for a week or so. Yeah. It may have a slight delay impact with something like PCT, but long term, there's not going to be any real long term issues with it. It's just a case, ride it out for a week and you'll be brand new.
Yeah. That's a good explanation.
All depends on where you are in how estrogen affects you as to whether it's a crucial point for you or not. I suppose really the only immediate impact's going to be around emotional sensitivity and stuff like that. which can obviously make it a rough ride for people, but it's short-lived. And I think we are sometimes a little bit too sensitive these days in the way we react to compounds, when we should sometimes just take a step back and go, let's give it a few days and see where it goes, and if it settles and, comes back to normal.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. All right. How about some Uncle Davey advice for the week? I think that's probably
got
a
it here.
Do you have any no advice for our listeners? Like, nothing like brush your teeth every night. Be sure to tell your mother that you love her. I think do nice things for other people, because it comes back to you. It makes you feel good about yourself. How about that one, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I think positivity in all aspects of your life does actually, and I'm not talking about, you need to be super rosy positive, everything's great, because everything isn't great. Life's shit at times, and people are shit at times, and it does get you down. But you've just got to try and you've got to be realistic about what's going on around you. And if you're going through a crap time, you've just got to remember that it will not last. And the more positive you are about improving that situation, the sooner it will get better. And very often we'll feel like the world's on top of us and we're not making progress and everything's garbage and we're not going anywhere. And then actually when you stop and look back, it's like, oh, actually, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other.
Yeah, we can be hard on ourselves.
We very much so, and I think within bodybuilding that's a very strong trait, because we sort of celebrate this downtrodden, I work harder than everybody else, I'm a hero because I get up at 5 o'clock and train at 5, and it's, look, if you can sleep until 9 o'clock and then train, lucky you. I'm just jealous.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just jealous. You don't have to deliberately make things hard to be better at what we do.
Yeah.
And if you can make life easy for yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a difference between making life easy for yourself and being lazy. Life is hard. It is not an easy ride. There will be times when you really just can't see a way out. But as long as you keep putting one foot in front of the other, and I keep going back to this theme because it is just what gets you through, times will get better. I haven't really got much this week, to be quite honest.
We should get you a poster of that fish to put on your wall.
Yeah, Dora.
Yeah, you can put it on your wall over there next to the hand, and I see the blood bus. Is that how you say it? The blood bus?
The blood bus.
Blood bus. I see it on your screen back there. Is that the blood bus on your camera in the background?
It is, yeah. Yes, it is.
You can watch it. You can watch the blood bus all day long. It's actually Dave's closed circuit TV that you can subscribe to and watch the blood bus. As it drives around, he's got drones. You can drive around and watch Dave move blood all day long. Wouldn't that be cool?
I think one of the things that we sometimes get a little bit het up on is we take things too personally.
Yeah.
Very few people set out to ruin your day. Most people ruin your day because they're too focused on concentrating on trying to make their day better.
Yeah. My dad gave me advice one time. I remember years ago, and he said, Scott, it's something that you said, because you said, things change, first of all. So if you don't like how you're feeling, wait, because how you feel is going to change. So if you don't like how you're feeling, hold on just a minute, because it's going to be something else shortly later. But I remember my dad telling me that the bad times are never as bad as they seem, and the good times are never as good as they seem.
No. A lot of our bad times are made worse because we think they're going to be worse than they actually are.
Yeah.
And if you just stop and actually look at it objectively, try and take the emotional element out of it, very often it's actually nothing. The amount of times I've got annoyed, peed off, upset, wound up about something, and then I've had to stop myself and go, well, actually, what that person's done is there's nothing wrong with it. wrong. It's just I'm not at the moment in a position to deal with that, or I don't want to deal with that, but I feel obliged to do so. And this comes a lot when people are asking for advice, because it's like it'll be 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, and I'm just going to bed or whatever, you know what I mean? And I'm chilling out, and they'll be bing, 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 bing. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. But that person's not actually expecting me to answer there and then.
True.
It's the pressure I put on myself.
I do the
to
same
answer
thing
there and then.
Yeah.
And then I get annoyed. It's like, I don't know if it's Sunday. And it's like, well, hang on, I can just answer it tomorrow morning. Why am I getting stressed about this? Because he's not creating the stress. I am.
Yeah. Yeah, I do the same thing. There's been times I've wanted to text you because we're watching a British TV show and it's 9 o'clock at night here. And I'm like, and I texted you the other night and I was like, I know that. But I felt bad. I was like, Dave, I know you'll see this in the morning, so that you knew, like, I wasn't expecting an answer at 3 a.m. from you. You know what I mean?
You weren't getting one.
Yeah. Which we watched. Why is it that British TV, one more important question, why is it that British TV only has like 6 episodes? We're watching this TV show called Such Brave Girls. In the first episode, I wasn't so sure about it. And then by the middle of the second episode, I was literally laughing out loud. The humor in that show is freaking dark, man. It's like they do stuff on that show you could not do on U.S. television, and it's funny as hell.
You want to watch something that would never, ever be allowed on air now. Watch, you have to go on YouTube for it, and it will be Alf Garnett in Sickness and in Health.
In Sickness and in Health?
It's an old show.
Okay. Well, this stuff wouldn't be out in the U.S. market. I mean, they're talking about things that are very heated topics, and they're making fun of them.
Basically, the character Alf Garnett is an old man who's grumpy, who has a care worker. He's racist as hell.
Okay.
He hates gays.
Okay.
And they send him a black gay carer.
Yeah, that sounds like a British show to me. So why is it, Dave, you guys only have like 6 episodes per season versus you watch a U.S. show, you've got like 32 episodes per season.
Yeah, but you've also got to remember that US shows normally 30 minutes long because the other 30 minutes of the show is advertisement.
Oh, come on. Such Brave Girls is like 20 minutes.
Is it? I've not seen it, mate. I don't even know what you're on about, so...
Yeah, it's about these 2 girls, these 2 sisters, and they live with their mom, and the dad is out of the picture, and one of the girls is super depressed all the time, and she doesn't have any sense of identity, and she thinks she might be gay, but she's comfortable in her relationship with her boyfriend, and although she treats him like crap, but being safe is important to her too. And the other girl is absolutely obsessed with this guy named Nicky, who wants nothing to do with her other than to like bang her once in a while and then leave her guessing, you know? And so she's at work texting him like, never speak to me again, I freaking hate you. Then 2 minutes later, just kidding, what are you up to, respond to this, don't respond to this mess, you know, all the stuff like that. It's good, but I can't even tell you some of the jokes that I'd seen in that show because it's like I said, man, they're probably not YouTube friendly either.
There is our lass loves a show called Derry Girls.
I love Derry Girls. We watched all of it, man. That was such a good show.
Have you ever watched Father Ted?
Father Ted? No, I haven't seen that.
Watch Father Ted.
All right, I'll see if I can find that one. We're watching Fargo right now, TV show, U.S. TV show, and it was based off of the movie, and it gets pretty dark, very cinematic, very, very good, entertaining show. We're on season 3 now.
Father Ted is just humor. It's just stupid humor.
Okay.
It's a priest that lives in Ireland in his house in the middle of nowhere, and he has another priest that lives with him who's thick as mince. I mean, stupider beyond stupid, called Dougal. And then there's an old retired priest that lives with him who's an alcoholic called Father Jack, and all he does is swear and get drunk. And they just have these stupid adventures. It's lighthearted, it's easygoing, but it is quite funny.
There's a lot of self-deprecating humor in British comedy where somebody does something and they make themselves look dumb, and then they're embarrassed in front of like the general public, and they just have to eat crap and live with it. You notice that? It's a very, I think, a common thing is that people end up feeling very embarrassed for themselves in British comedy.
I think our humor is very abuse driven.
Yeah. It's dark. It's dark.
Yeah, and in a nice way. I mean, there's a guy, I can't remember his name. He's all over TikTok and Instagram Reels at the moment. He's a Scouse comedian. It might be Paul Smith, and basically he just picks on the front row in his show, and he'll ask a name, ask what they do, and to be honest, if someone spoke to me that in the street, I'd be having to put my hands in my pockets because I'd be wanting to, but it's picking in the humour. And I think that's something that is unique to British humour, is the level of abuse we will give each other, but also to the depths of where that abuse will go.
Yeah.
And it's just taken as banter and being humour, I mean, there's no subject that's taboo between mates. We can, you can do anything.
What does this mean? You're Paul Smith, Dave. You're Paul Smith.
Yes, it's Paul Smith, Dave.
That's the guy's name?
Yeah.
Only Fools and Horses? What's that?
That's an old. I'm not a fan.
No?
I'll probably get shot for this, but I'm not a fan.
Yep.
So
Vincent Ford said Paul Smith as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember watching a show. I watched the whole thing. It was two guys that lived in an apartment together. Excuse me, a flat. Two guys that lived in a flat together. And I think it was called Peep Show.
Oh, right. Okay. Watch Bottom.
Bottom?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll write that one down. Bottom.
That's two guys that live in a flat.
Okay. Yeah. And I think they called it Peep Show because it looked inside their heads and what they said versus what they were thinking.
All right. Watch Bottom.
Okay. I'll check it out. All right, guys.
Okay.
It's what?
It's a spin-off from a show called The Young Ones.
I know The Young Ones. Yeah, I never watched it, but I'm familiar with it.
Well, basically, two of the characters out of The Young Ones live together in a flat. They're not those characters, but the actors, the comedians that played those characters, they live in a flat together, and it's still very similar behaviour. Right. But it's ridiculous, but it's funny.
Well, we only have, I think, one episode left of Such Brave Girls. And here's the thing. I'm going to tell you, one of the jokes is that the mom is dating this guy who has a really nice house, and he has no money, and she wants him to invite her and the girls to go live at that house. And it turns out that his late wife, his wife had passed away, and the girl's mom, their father just went out for crackers or something one day and went out for smokes and never came back. And one of the girls still believes oh yeah, he's going to come back. And she has all these daddy issues. She's the one who has the boyfriend who doesn't care about her. Anyway, the mom ended up telling the boyfriend that their dad had died as well, to get in with him so they could bond over having both lost a spouse. And the dad or the boyfriend is oh, you girls are such brave girls, and they have to go along with this lie, the whole time. And that's how the show, I think, gets its name. Is the second episode, he says, "Oh, you're such brave girls," and they're really all the most horrible human beings. So anyway, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for watching, and leave us questions for the next episode. Dave, I shared with the group over at Facebook a video you did from your training seminar. You're starting to get those videos back and posting them up on social media.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, the progressive resistance one.
And any plans yet on doing another one of those?
I'll see what the feedback is. I got the videos back yesterday, so there's a few I'm going to fire out. There's a lot I'm not, but there's a few I'm going to fire out. And then I'll put an ad up and see what people want to do. I'm going to run another Pillars course. And probably do another seminar training course as well. So we'll see what feedback is, but I thought I'll just do a bit of marketing first. And then the other thing is Clearview is just about to go live.
Clearview? What's that?
Steroid testing.
Oh, no kidding. So if you're in the UK, you can send a bottle of something in, find out what's in it.
Not yet, but we're close. Yeah, we're dry running at the moment, just making sure everything works in the sense of the web end of it works and syncs with everything.
Okay.
So I'm hoping the website is functional before the end of this week.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, keep us posted on that. And guys, of course, you can go to evalbloodanalysis.com if you're in the UK, get your lab work done by Dave. You can go to truenutrition.com if you're in the US and use our code THINK over there. High quality, third-party tested proteins, all sorts of carb powders, everything you can think of. They really have it all. If you need supplements and you want to support our programming, shop with them. You'll get some good stuff and you support our show with code THINK. Supplementsource.ca for our Canadians. And, of course, STROM Sports Nutrition for those of you in the UK. Great health and performance supplements. Thank you to everybody from Patreon. We had some Patreon questions. Keep firing those things in. And stay tuned to Patreon for everything that's going on with the show. Oh, also, if you're watching on Spotify, if you listen on Spotify, Dave, they have video on Spotify now.
Ooh.
So if you use Spotify to listen to the show, you can look at our pretty faces. You can see Dave's beautiful face.
Dave needs a wee.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon for another episode of the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally. Catch you later. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right.